Welcome back, everyone. I'm so thrilled to have with us here today Caroline Smith, who graduated from Yale College in 2014 and was my guest speaker today in Introduction to Social Entrepreneurship. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Of course. Thank
So
you.
you started this new organization called Collab, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about how it started. I mean, you came here from Kentucky to get your undergraduate degree, right?
Yeah.
How did this all happen?
Definitely. Yeah. So Margaret Lee is the other co-director of Collab, and Margaret and I share a ton of similarities. We both were originally from Kentucky. I was born and raised there. And
What are the odds?
I know, it's nuts. She's also Korean. I'm half Korean. We both graduated from Yale, class of 2014. And in different reasons and actually different ways, completely fell in love with New Haven and got lucky enough to be able to stay here. Margaret was working at the Yale Entrepreneurial Institute, seen through hundreds of different student ventures, really running a lot of their incubation and acceleration programs. And then I was working for a local civic tech startup that was founded in New Haven, See, Click, Fix, and doing a lot of different community organizing
work. As in See, Click, Fix?
Exactly.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Exactly. And just doing a lot of different sort of really deep work in the community. And so we really came together with those two skill sets, her experience in venture and my experience within the New Haven community. And eventually, after some iterations, created this community-based accelerator for New Haven entrepreneurs.
Tell me more about those iterations.
Yeah, definitely. So Margaret and I first meet. She's sitting behind a table at the Yale Entrepreneurial Bazaar, and we really connected and bonded over how do we build more mutual spaces where Yale students and New Haven residents can connect and build power together. We really cared and continue to care about the Yale-New Haven relationship and how do we improve it, make it stronger. Because I think for us, something that was very clear and very evident is at a grassroots level, Yale students and New Haven residents had a hunger to connect, but just not a lot of spaces to be able to do that.
Yeah, and everyone's always saying Yale, like as, the institution, like
right.
Yale
Yes.
should give more
right.
to New Haven.
Right.
And that sounds very top down. So why not start bottom up with the students?
1,000%. That's exactly right. And so Margaret and I, our first guess and our first hypothesis of how to do this was to create an event series also called Collaboratory, that brought together these, Yale freshmen to lifelong New Haven residents in the same room. And basically how they were structured is we had either a Yale-affiliated or a New Haven-affiliated organization in front of the room. They said their mission and 3 challenges they were facing in addressing their mission.
So it's like reverse pitching.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, here are our problems,
yeah.
right? Here's our failures. And then this room full of individuals that sort of represented a lot of different facets of both Yale and New Haven neighborhoods were coming together to help support these organizations. The main fundamental thing being say, hey, let's create a space where there's a level playing field where everyone is an expert. Everyone can bring expertise to the table, and New Haven residents and Yale students can work together to help support these organizations. And basically what we saw from that is like, wow, there are so many incredible individuals from both Yale and New Haven that have ideas that could deeply impact their neighborhoods and could even potentially scale. But when we looked at the entrepreneurial pipeline, we saw, wow, there's a fair amount of, education, one-off workshops at the library, mentoring with SCORE, and at a later stage, whether from institutions, foundations, or VCs, a fair amount of later stage capital. But right in the middle, at an early stage, when someone had an idea, maybe some validation, were primed and ready to go, there wasn't a whole lot. And specifically, there wasn't a whole lot of programming that addressed some of the barriers to entrepreneurship, whether they're logistical, financial, or psychological barriers. And so it became our next goal and the next iteration and theory change around Collab was to create a community-centered accelerator for Connecticut entrepreneurs with the main mission and heart and goal of making entrepreneurship accessible.
Okay. So what was the pivotal moment that allowed you to leave your jobs and start Collab as its own organization?
Yeah, definitely. So, our work is excitedly so and kind of wonderfully so for us, deeply place-based. It's always centered around me and Margaret's love of New Haven and more broadly our love of this place we called home, Connecticut. And as a result, we are just built off of a foundation of relationships in the city and in the state. And I think as a result of building a lot of those relationships, we've gotten really, really lucky and had a lot more opportunities. And one of those opportunities was that a couple years ago, the state of Connecticut created this grant called the Innovation Places Grant. And their essential goal was, let's invest in some key cities in Connecticut to create innovation hubs. And New Haven was one of those cities that applied, and Collab was one part of the City of New Haven's application, along with some other projects. And New Haven got the application, and it's a 3 to 5 year grant. And we were lucky enough to be able to receive that grant, which allowed us and empowered us to be able to go full time.
So you started Collab as a separate organization? As you registered a new organization?
Yes. I mean, we actually, because we're a project, we actually have just been fiscally sponsored by the Economic Development Corporation, which it was the fiscal sponsor for the grant and has continued to be a fiscal sponsor for us, which has allowed us a lot of flexibility to really focus on the programming and focus on, let's prove that two things. One, that there's demand for accessible entrepreneurship support, and two, that Margaret and I are the best positioned to provide this support. And I think that has allowed us in this last year to try to prove those two things, and now can kind of think and wrap our heads more around the organizational sort of integrity.
Well, the reason I asked that was because, well, I'm always telling people, don't start your own venture unless you have to. Like, find out if someone's already working on this and you can join forces. But B, also, I noticed that I think a lot of what makes your work effective and meaningful is you and Margaret's love of New Haven and this theory of what you can do to strengthen the ecosystem, coupled with the relationships you've built with all these different partners. You mentioned the City of New Haven, you mentioned the Economic
Development Corporation.
You mentioned the New Haven Public Library and all these other organizations. So it's not just the two of you starting something new and operating in a vacuum. It's really strengthening the system, right?
Absolutely. And I think the two things I'd add to that, I think that's really well said, is also partnerships, if you will, with the entrepreneurs themselves. I think that was really important to us as we realized, okay, it seems like an accelerator or some kind of program around entrepreneurship is really important. It's really clear that there are systemic barriers to entrepreneurship right now, whether small or large. Let's make sure we're talking to our customers, talking to the people that we aim to serve, and make sure that they have ownership over this process and are deeply informing the process. Even down to the nitty-gritty of what time should our sessions or should our workshops actually happen. What resources do we need to provide to make sure that you feel comfortable, equipped, and ready to be successful in our program? And that's why, as part of the program, we provide some of those services, whether it's childcare or interpretation or transportation services.
Okay. Are you talking at all with the other cities in Connecticut that got similar grants when the state did this innovation, or even similar organizations in other states?
Yeah, no, definitely. Both. So when we first started out, obviously Margaret had her background with YEI running her incubator and accelerator programs, but there are a lot of different models for inclusive entrepreneurship across the country, whether it's Propeller in New Orleans or E4All in Massachusetts. And so it was important for us to learn from people who had done this really well. And so we had a fair amount of conversations with different incubators and accelerators, as well as just doing our own research to talk about kind of all the different pieces, right? Because if our goal is to operationalize inclusivity, then that means inclusivity isn't sort of a branch of an organization. It is the backbone. It has to be a part of everything we do, from selection to outreach to the actual program itself. And so those were some of the main questions that we came to, and we asked a lot of the incubators and accelerators, as well as things like, how do you measure yourself? Because as I was saying in class, I think there's a lot about how economic development generally is measured that we aim to challenge and we want to push.
What does success look like?
Exactly. Yeah. What does it mean for us to have a successful city, and how do these accelerator and entrepreneurship programs measure themselves to really meet what it means to be a successful city? And then your second question was, or part of your question was around, so we were talking to incubators, accelerators across the country, but also different cities in Connecticut. definitely. So we last summer took a lot of different field trips around the state of Connecticut, and I think on a personal level that was rewarding because I've loved New Haven for the past 10 years. I have not as much gotten to know the state of Connecticut, and a big part of our growth, or my personal growth with building Collab, has been getting to know this fascinating state that we call Connecticut. And this summer, just actually going to different cities, learning about their different various programming.
You know, the tagline of Connecticut is the revolutionary state,
yeah.
which is really, you know, significant for entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And also, I think the former tagline was full of surprises, which is
Really?
another like really innovation-specific
That
tagline.
is
Yeah.
interesting. That's very
Anyway, I
fascinating.
interrupted you.
No, I love that. That's fascinating. A fascinating tagline. But yeah, no, we because Connecticut's so small, it's I think in a lot of ways a really deep advantage, because it means that, all right, entrepreneurs, first of all, we are a Connecticut-wide program, so entrepreneurs from any different part of the state can be a part of our programs. Obviously, we have a focus on Greater New Haven, but it means that it's really important for us to be well aware of all the entrepreneurship resources that are happening, such that, you know, folks that are entering our program or folks that are leaving our program have places to go, because it's a train ride away. It's not that far.
Yeah.
And so having a really intimate knowledge of what those programs are, so that we can connect entrepreneurs to their programs, is really valuable, because two reasons. One, we can only select so many ventures out of a pool of incredibly promising ideas and entrepreneurs. And two, you know, after people graduate from Collab, they're going to need more support. And so to be able to have connective tissue between other organizations is vital to the success of these entrepreneurs.
I think so too. And I think that a lot of what you do is very localized in terms of here's what we need in New Haven, here's what our relationships in New Haven can do, and how we can bring people together. And the way that fits into the context of what's going on at the state or even the national or global level in terms of economic development, who participates in the market, really requires thinking beyond the local context. It requires thinking about how can all these different accelerators operate as a network and build a supply chain. When you think of new entrepreneurs coming in and creating new products and services, and then investors building a pipeline for investors and potentially scaling some of them, I think a lot of it can be done locally. But then you always have to make sure to look up and think about how does this all fit into what others are doing to have that state or national or global level economic socioeconomic indicators for sustainable development.
100% agree.
Thank you so much again for being here with us today. We're so excited to see what you do and to be part of it in any way we can.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.